The 6th Philanthropy Asia Summit is bringing together leaders from across Asia and beyond in Singapore, with innovation and collaboration high on the agenda. Over the next few days, discussions will focus on how philanthropy, technology and investment can work together to tackle global challenges, including climate change, healthcare and inclusive development. And for the latest from the summit, we cross now to CNA's Jill Neubronner at Marina Bay Sands. Jill?
Glenda, Asia's development story is entering a new chapter, but as economies grow, questions remain about whether institutions can keep pace. From financing gaps to inequality and execution challenges, how can the region turn ambition into real impact? Well, I'm speaking with Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro, Dean and CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute, about what's holding progress back and whether philanthropy can help shape Asia's next phase of growth. Bambang, welcome to you. Now, from your experience in both government and now at the ADBI, where do you see the biggest opportunity to translate development finance into real impact on the ground?
Yeah, I think if we look at the history in Asia about the impact of financial development is quite clear. I think financial development has been performed well to bring majority of Asian countries from low income to middle income. So it is like the very great achievement. And then if you remember the 2015, when everybody in the world agrees about sustainable development goals, then the role of development finance becomes even more important, because development finance is really the backbone to fulfill all the 17 goals of SDG. But unfortunately, because of number one of COVID-19, and number two, because of withdrawal of some, major donor for development from the field of development finance, then I think now in Asia we have entered the new phase of development finance, meaning that it has to be more innovative. And part of the innovation in development finance has to include philanthropy.
Okay, so we're in a phase where we need to develop. So maybe the backbone is not so strong. So I'm curious, you've led finance, planning, research portfolios as well.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest bottleneck in development? Is it the policy itself? Is it how we execute capacity? Or perhaps even a lack of political will?
Well, I think combination of some, but I would say number one is the issue of the policy consistency. Because whenever you're dealing with the development issues, you might not be able to solve the problem, let's say, within 5 years or even 10 years. So it needs some continuation. And that's the challenge when it comes to development finance and how to really execute the program.
Yeah.
So number one is policy consistency. And number two, the source of the finance itself. Because usually when the country already in the middle income, especially upper middle income, they don't really need so-called direct loan, for example, from multilateral development bank like World Bank or ADB. They prefer to raise their own financing from the government bonds. So in this case, sometimes there is a missing link between the goal of development that has been well established by the MDBs with the ideas that come from the country itself. So I think this is the area in which the multilateral development bank as well as public development bank all around the world, especially in Asia, needs to communicate better with the so-called the host country to make sure that they still have some kind of value added in terms, not only in terms of financing, but also in terms of knowledge and in terms of being catalytic financing to help the countries really to elevate themselves from middle income into high income country.
You mentioned catalyst financing. Philanthropy can play a role in that because they can fill the gap of risk capital, so to speak, to be that catalyst to spark it off. So if this new bond model is in the works right now, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I think there has been kind of new approach of development finance. In the past, whenever you are talking development finance, it's just about loan borrowing. But now, since some countries tend to prefer to get the money from the market, maybe now the development finance needs to kind of reorient themselves into, number one, being part of the catalytic financing. Meaning, in the past, they rely on concessional financing. Of course, concessional financing is still very much needed, but now you cannot just use the concessional financing for direct borrowing, but it's better if the concessional financing is for attracting private sector, private financing to be involved in development financing in general. Plus, of course, the size of concessional financing might not be enough. So they need to have more. And where does the money come from? One of them is from the philanthropy, especially from the so-called big philanthropy that has been like donating, doing a lot of charities for a long time. So maybe now they need to also reorient themselves in line with development finance in order to be altogether the catalytic financing to attract more private sector.
So can you guarantee that there won't be any duplication? Because where can philanthropic capital be most effective is to complement, right, what the ADB is already doing. But how do they not duplicate or perhaps overstep into areas where, there's government financing or public financing?
I think the philanthropy realized that the money that they have, even though maybe it's quite big in their perspective, will not be enough. I mean, development issues, especially in Asia, is just simply too complicated to be solved by single or few sources of financing. We need everyone to work together. So I believe the major philanthropy will understand that the money they have, now it will be more useful if it is really used for being part of the catalytic rather than donating directly to certain development activities. I think that kind of awareness has been there. And I think this Philanthropy Asia Summit is intended to bring everybody on the same table to think and then also to interact with private sector. What will be the requirement of private sector if they want philanthropy to help them involved in the development activities?
Okay. All right. So there is a role for everyone.
Yes. It has to be everybody.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for your time with us
My
today.
pleasure.
I've been speaking there with Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro, Dean and CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute. One of the many fascinating conversations here today with the movers and shakers of Asian philanthropy. That's a wrap for me here at this year's Philanthropy Asia Summit at Marina Bay Sands. Glenda, it is back to you.